If you've been paying attention to vintage collection figures as of late, you've probably noticed how good the heads have been getting. They have been getting very, very good. I have to say, I never thought I would say this, but the heads are starting to get comparable to micro Hot Toys. Hot Toys have always had some amazing head sculpts. However, I feel like the likenesses and the qualities of 3 3/4 inch figure head sculpts nowadays, I can say I don't even think Hot Toys themselves could make it much better at this tiny scale. However, this video is not going to be highlighting clone trooper faces, because that's going to be a separate video coming up very shortly. This is going to be talking about characters that aren't clone troopers, because if you know my channel, I mostly talk about clones. However, I still collect all different kinds of Star Wars figures, and even though the clone faces to me have been some of the most impressive, there have been many others that have also been quite impressive. So in no particular order, let's go over 10 of the ones that I think have been the most impressive and my favorites when it comes to this new face printing era. So first up, we have Fenix Shand. I have to say, Fenix Shand's a very nice face here, but I don't feel like it's as good. I think there's just something just a little off about it. I just can't put my finger on it. It's just something a little off. However, I do think it is a very great likeness. A reason why it's probably lower on this list, even though it's in no particular order, I did want to highlight her as probably being the least of all of these, is because they could have extended the nice likeness into the helmeted head sculpt, but unfortunately they just blacked it out. There's no eyes or anything behind the helmet. It's just a black helmet, and that's pretty disappointing. That's actually why I do not display her with the helmet, because even though I love the look of her helmet, without seeing the eyes through it, I don't really feel like there's much of a reason to. I do have to say it's a pretty great likeness, though, besides that. Next up, I have to give it to Din Djarin from the most recent release in his Imperial Combat Driver armor. This likeness, even though they did do a previous Din Djarin likeness, I think this one just captures it even better. It really looks exactly like him. That is Pedro Pascal to a T. That looks perfect. From every angle, it's him. It's him, and I love how it has the helmet hair. It does such a great job. And one fun thing about these faces, they're all so nicely detailed that my camera picks each and every one up as a face. It's pretty great. So randomly picking from the pile, oh, this one's very nice. I decided to highlight this one because this is actually the first time we have seen this actor get a likeness. But on top of that, I think they did a great job with it. Forgive me, I do not know the name of the actor or the character, because this guy, to everyone, is just known as the main Rebel Fleet Trooper. He was the one that was in the head of the entire hallway. He was the one that got the most close-up shots. He was one of the very first characters ever seen in Star Wars. So I think having a figure of him with such a nice likeness is superb. This is one of the instances where they took an older body and gave it a new head sculpt. They've done that a lot, especially with the clone troopers. However, I think this is one of the most successful iterations of that. Sometimes what they've been doing, they've been taking old head sculpts and giving them the face printing. There's not a single one of those on this list, because unfortunately, they're old sculpts with new paint. Even though the paint looks nice, I think a big thing about these new vintage collection figures is the likeness and the quality of the sculpt. Randomly picking next, oh, it's another one I've talked about very recently. It's the Rosario Dawson likeness for the new Ahsoka figure. This one is just amazing, man. Look at that. That looks exactly like Rosario Dawson. This is one of the best ones, in my opinion. It is just so spot on. I mean, with a character where it's, they're wearing makeup and they have all this crazy alien stuff on, it's really cool to see that they were still able to get the likeness to the actor. And there's another one down the road that's another alien that, again, I feel like really captures the likeness of the actor. This Ahsoka is mind-blowing to me. Honestly, when it comes to the head sculpts and all that, Black Series and Vintage Collection, I would say they are on the same level, but Black Series suffers from that glossy face syndrome, while I have never really seen a case of that in the Vintage Collection yet. So personally, even though I do typically fly the flag for Team TVC, and this comes off as very biased, I do have to give it to the Vintage Collection for the likenesses now. TVC has been killing it. This is the first time I've ever really seen a Darth Maul figure that looks like Ray Park. It is done so well. Because oftentimes, you know, Ray Park, I feel like his likeness especially is really lost under the makeup and all of that with action figures. They just kind of sculpt a guy and then paint the Darth Maul stuff on him, and boom, it's Darth Maul. You know, you wouldn't really question it. But I just feel like the facial features and the likeness and the shaping and everything, especially from the profile, you can tell that's Ray Park. That is a very, very good head. I think this is, again, one of the better ones we've seen so far. It's actually quite funny. I've had to re-angle the camera because it keeps wanting to focus on the Ahsoka face. But next up, we have Moff Gideon. I feel like the likeness to Giancarlo Esposito here is pretty spot on. Is this at the top of the list? I wouldn't say so. I wouldn't say this is at the top. But I do feel like this is pretty well done. I feel like Moff Gideon's hairstyle and the mustache is something you don't really expect to see from the actor. I mean, most people know him as Gus from Breaking Bad. You know, he's Gus from Breaking Bad, but in Star Wars. Even though he's an awesome actor, he has basically been typecast as the bad guy. Despite that, awesome character, really love him. And, you know, he does a great job of being the bad guy. That's why he's been typecast. And I think that this figure really captures an excellent likeness of him. Next up, I've already discussed Mando. And again, I've already reviewed this guy. But Bill Burr's likeness from the Miggs Mayfield figure, in my opinion, is another excellent one. That looks so much like Bill Burr. Man, it's just so crazy how the likeness is on these little tiny action figures. These heads that are seriously the size of M&Ms have likeness that is so superb and so spot on. Because back in the day, man, I mean, looking at 90s stuff, they looked goofy. Looking back at 80s and 70s stuff, oh my goodness, it looked nothing like them. 2000 stuff, it started to come in because there's starting to be some face scanning technology. However, I feel like in recent years, the face printing has just made the likenesses so outstanding. You know, we've come a long way. It has been phenomenal seeing how these faces have evolved. Next up, we have another face on an old body. It is the Hascon, or PulseCon, I don't remember. The Emperor Palpatine. I feel like this likeness is very nice. This is the smiling likeness. I do still really like the angry face that was sold at retail. But man, I've been waiting for a nice looking Emperor for a long time. We just haven't gotten it. The Emperors have been either based off of video games, or the weird look in Empire Strikes Back, the pre-special edition, or the prequels, and even then it's not perfect. This likeness, that's the Emperor. That's Palpatine. It's just so nice looking. And especially with the sculpted hood, man, that's him right there. I think the texture between the sculpted hood and the fabric actually matches pretty well too. So what you end up with is, in my opinion, the definitive Palpatine. Talking about the last two, and it's kind of a coincidence that these are what I consider to be a couple of the very best Star Wars action figures ever made. Bokatan, for some reason she's holding her helmet backwards. But yeah, the Vintage Collection Bokatan, in my opinion, is one of the very best Star Wars action figures ever made. And the likeness to the actress here is no exception. That looks great. That looks just like her. I think the hairstyle works. I think it's a great job. And one thing I really like about this figure is how they decided not to sacrifice the head sculpt for the sake of putting a helmet on it. Instead, they opted for an interchangeable head. And even though that is kind of unfortunate, because if you want her displayed with the helmet, that means you're just left with a head that's just laying around somewhere. I think it really benefits the likeness. I think it does a great job looking like Bo-Katan. This is, like I said, one of my very favorite 3 3/4 inch Star Wars action figures, period. I love it. It's great. Go get it. So some people are going to find this hilarious because I said I wasn't going to talk about a clone. But next up, I think, and I'm going to kind of say this is probably my favorite. I'm going to say the best likeness is the Vintage Collection Book of Boba Fett. I consider this, like I said, the best 3 3/4 inch Star Wars action figure. But taking off this helmet, you can see another reason why. Because, like I said, they've been doing a lot of likenesses to Tamora Morrison with the Clone Troopers. But this likeness, where we get a modern Tamora Morrison, while a lot of the troops were based off of how he looked in, movies 15, 20 years old, this here, that is Tamora Morrison. That is phenomenal. It is just so stunning to me how they're able to capture a little tiny likeness. Again, this is my thumb. A face smaller than my thumbnail. A face about the size of my pinky nail. they've been able to capture a likeness this perfect. I'm looking at it from different angles. I'm not really seeing a place where it doesn't look like him. That's Tamora Morrison as Boba Fett. It's superb. It's simply superb. And let's just take him back, and let's just zoom out and take a look at all of these likenesses that you see before you. It looks like all these little tiny people standing on my desk. It's crazy to me. And these are just my top 10 favorites. There's so many other faces that I think they've done an excellent job of. Cara Dune was a great one. Greef Karga, that was a really good one. I feel like they're still kind of struggling with some characters like Han Solo, Harrison Ford, and Mark Hamill. Ford and Hamill, for some reason, those two actors, even Hot Toys struggle sometimes. Those actors just have odd likenesses to capture. But I think they're going to get there. I think we'll get there at the end. And I'm really excited to see, hopefully at some point, a new Han Solo with a perfect likeness in Vintage Collection. Especially in A New Hope Han Solo. That'd be superb. Princess Leia, the Bespin Escape one. That's a very nice likeness too. However, these, in my opinion, are just my 10 favorite. You do have to point out, looking at all of these, that only 2 of them are from non-Disney Star Wars media. I wanted to talk about this because when I was looking around my shelves in my collection, I noticed that they haven't been doing a lot for especially the prequels. The prequels just flat out do not have a lot of new vintage collection. Of course, there's clones. There's Clone Wars clones. There's just clones, which is awesome. I love clones. However, I was looking like, have they really done, a new Anakin, a new Obi-Wan? Not really. They've just been going and, face printing old sculpts and just reissuing the figures. And like I said, they don't look that good, in my opinion. They don't look good enough to rebuy a figure. They don't. However, when it's a new likeness and a new sculpt, it's great. It's superb. Looking at these, man, especially the Tamora Morrison in the front, I am so beyond impressed. I am so impressed with what Hasbro has been able to achieve here. And I think these are splendid and superb action figures. Alrighty, guys, I think I've rambled off long enough. Hasbro's likenesses have been killing it. I think the Vintage Collection ones are better than the Black Series, but that's just me. I don't like my figures looking like they just got out of the shower. God, some of the faces are so glossy. Have you seen how people have to, take, matte clear coat to them just to make them look halfway decent? It's crazy. But yes, despite that, I think Hasbro in general has been nailing likenesses. And I think at a smaller scale like this, too, you don't really notice, if there are any imperfections, you don't notice them as much. And it just looks even better at this smaller scale. Hasbro's killing it. They could be doing a lot better when it comes to business practices and release schedules and all that. But the figures they have been giving us have been so good. Just stop raising the prices, please. Alrighty, guys, there we go. I think I've rambled off long enough. Special shout out to the patrons at Patreon, especially Patreon Clone Commander Last Laugh for recommending this video. I think this was a very nice look at some of the best head sculpts. And like I said, we will be doing a video discussing some Clone Trooper head sculpts, even though there is a new pretty controversial one coming up that I've yet to acquire. We'll still talk about that one, though, in the video. Alrighty, guys, thank you so much for watching. Have a great one, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.